It's official. North Carolina has a new congressional map for next year's elections. The map was drawn by Republican lawmakers at the behest of President Donald Trump. It greatly changes the makeup of the 1st District in eastern North Carolina, which is defined by its high proportion of black voters. Welcome to Shoresides, where we explore coastal North Carolina's past, present, and future to promote community resilience. I'm Layna Hong. In today's episode, I spoke with Sarah Michaels, a reporter at Carolina Public Press who has followed this issue closely. She was in Winston-Salem last month at the federal court hearing that challenged the new map. This is the third part of a series where I tackle one of the biggest ongoing political issues in our state and how it's currently playing out in our coastal region's Black Belt. While the plaintiffs were ultimately unsuccessful in their case for racial gerrymandering, the issue is far from closed. Sarah and I talked about her reporting, the court hearing, and what this means for the region moving forward. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem.
Can you tell me a little bit about North Carolina's newest congressional map? How does this new map favor Republicans?
So, North Carolina's new congressional map changes two districts from what it was before, the 1st congressional district and the 3rd. And it essentially moves more Republican parts of the 3rd district into the 1st district, which makes the 1st district more Republican and the 3rd district less Republican, but the 3rd district was already more Republican. So it essentially gives Republicans about a 55% share of, what they expect the vote to be in both of those districts, which is usually enough for Republicans to win.
It's actually legal to do that in North Carolina, right? Partisan gerrymandering is actually allowed.
Yes, it's actually legal in North Carolina and quite a few states across the country. A few years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in this case that was actually originated in North Carolina, funnily enough, that they essentially couldn't rule on partisan gerrymandering because it was too hard to draw the line between what's okay, partisan gerrymandering, and what's not okay. They felt like if they were going to draw that line, it would get a little bit too into the political weeds that state legislatures should be in charge of. And so they said, hey, like states, you guys can decide what you want to do on that. And the North Carolina courts, once they became majority Republican on the state Supreme Court, they said, yeah, we're fine with partisan gerrymandering. That seems okay with us.
This map was initially passed in late October, and it's been met with legal outrage from advocacy groups and voters who they say that this map is racial gerrymandering, which because partisan gerrymandering is legal in North Carolina, the racial argument kind of becomes the only way to challenge these maps in court. So what's the argument there from the plaintiffs?
Yeah, that's true that racial gerrymandering is kind of the last line left to challenge any of this on. And in North Carolina specifically, the 1st district has become sort of what we call an opportunity district for Black voters and North Carolinians because there's a higher proportion of Black voting age population there. And it's elected some Black congressmen for like the past 25 years or so. U.S. Representative Don Davis is a Black congressman and he currently serves there. Also home to the Black Belt, which is a series of counties in North Carolina that have historically had a high voting age population of Black residents. In the court case, the plaintiffs have argued that the changes in the map reduce the voting age population proportion in the 1st district, which is true. And they're saying that that was not a coincidence and that that's discrimination against Black voters and that the court should be able to strike it down because of that.
So could you tell me a little bit about some of the interesting arguments that you heard in the courtroom, either from the plaintiffs or the defendants?
One of the most interesting parts of the hearing was the plaintiffs tried a new argument that nobody's ever used in any redistricting case, and they based it on the First Amendment. And they said, hey, so a lot of this map drawing was based on the results of the 2024 election, how North Carolinians voted. They voted for Democrats in the 1st district, and they voted for Republicans in the 3rd district. And then the only reason that this map was drawn, it wasn't because of a census. It wasn't required to be drawn. It wasn't because of a court mandate that required a map to be redrawn. It was just drawn for political reasons to give Republicans an extra seat. And so they're saying, okay, well, the fact that there was no reason to draw this map and you only based it on the 2024 election results, that's kind of viewpoint discrimination. Like it's a violation of these voters' First Amendment because they expressed their viewpoint, which was support for Democratic candidates, and you said, we're going to punish you because of that, and we're going to redraw your maps so you can't have a say. The judges didn't really buy that argument, but I did think it was a very interesting take.
What kind of precedent does that set for future redistricting, in your opinion, if lawmakers can now just do it for no reason?
Right. So one of the most interesting lines of questioning I thought that really called out to me in the court hearing was the plaintiff said, well, if you can decide to redraw a map without a court ruling, without a census, then what's stopping you from redrawing a map every few months if you feel like it? What's stopping you from redrawing a map every time there's an election and voters choose Democrats and you say, I want to change the lines so that they can't do that again. And the defendants, they said, well, I mean, yeah, the legislature has the right to redraw maps however they want and whenever they want. So they didn't really assuage any concerns, I guess you could say. And the plaintiffs called this a quote, endless game of whack-a-mole, which I thought was a pretty interesting term for it. I mean, in my opinion, that does cause, it opens a can of worms for sure. And I think courts are the last resort to resolve something like that. And if they don't do anything about it now, then maybe down the line, they'll have to figure out some way to limit that.
If the plaintiffs decide to appeal, it's going to go straight to the Supreme Court. Do you see that happening?
I can see the plaintiffs appealing it to the US Supreme Court, but based on what's happened in the Texas case, I don't think they're going to find any real relief there. The Texas redistricting map was appealed to the US Supreme Court, and they essentially, the Supreme Court said that was okay for them to keep their map, which supposedly adds 5 Republican seats in the US House. I don't see how the North Carolina's case would be any different. That would cause a different result.
Do you see this issue now as a closed book, or do you see there's more to this issue as we go forward?
I think the map is going to stick. I think what happens next is what happens with every redistricting process is redistricting isn't just drawing the lines on a map. It has real impacts on policy. Whoever represents you in Congress and the state legislature or wherever determines like what happens in your state, tax levels, like what happens with education and health, really every area of your life. So the ripple effects are too many to name, I would say. And even if Don Davis does manage to win in 2026, it's unlikely, like in 2028, 2030, if this map remains, that the Democrats will be able to maintain a stronghold there.
Well, thank you for your time, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.
That's Sarah Michaels with Carolina Public Press talking about her reporting on redistricting in North Carolina. I'm Layna Hong for Shore Sides. Thanks for listening.